Hey everyone, this is Pastor Anthony Nix coming at you from Anderson Seventh-day Adventist Church with another weekly devotion entitled Satan's First Counterattack. With the blueprint of the plan of salvation and the possession of Israel, God's chosen people were to prepare the world for the coming Messiah. But soon after they had received the sanctuary plans, they did not keep his testimonies. They were unfaithful and turned aside from following God. Because of this, God forsook the tabernacle at Shiloh. As a result of Israel's continued rebellion through idolatry, God warned that the whole nation would be desolate and eventually serve the king of Babylon for 70 years. Even though God sent them messengers, they would mock them and eventually find themselves being taken over by Babylon. Among these captives were Daniel and his three friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, better known as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. While Daniel was in Babylon, he received a vision from God revealing that God's people would have 70 weeks of grace, and this time period was given to them to put an end to their rebellious disposition and that put them into captivity and to prepare for the first coming of Christ. The vision gives a starting point for the prophecy, which is the command to restore and build Jerusalem. If one were to count 69 prophetic weeks from the command to restore and build Jerusalem, it would lead to the very year which the Messiah would be anointed to begin his work of redemption. That decree came from Artaxerxes of Persia in the year 457 BC. According to Numbers 14:34, the time prophecies of Daniel are based on the principle that a prophetic day is always counted as one literal year. And since 69 weeks equals 483 days, this prophetic time period would amount to 483 years. That brings us to AD 27, the very year that Jesus was baptized in the Jordan according to Matthew 3:16. But Christ came to his people, and his own people did not receive him. Christ was anointed or baptized at the beginning of the 69th week, which was the year AD 27. So in the midst of the remaining week or 7 years, he would be cut off, confirm the covenant, and bring it into the sacrifices and offerings. Exactly 3.5 years after Christ was baptized, he was indeed cut off, separated, not for himself, but for the world. Jesus was betrayed by the leaders of Israel and thus rejected by the whole nation. Christ had come to bridge the separation caused by sin by taking upon himself our sins. Jesus would experience this separation from God. The prophecy also states that through his death, he would bring an end to the sacrificial system. There was no longer a need for sacrificing animals or keeping certain ceremonial laws, which pointed forward to his work of redemption. These laws surrounding the sacrifices were to cease, while the eternal law of God was confirmed. Satan would now seek to use the death of Christ to his advantage, teaching that there was no longer any need to keep the Ten Commandments, and that the grace of Jesus nullified the law of God. This error that Christ nailed the moral law of God to the cross instead of the ceremonial law of Moses has been challenged by spiritual giants such as Charles Spurgeon, John Wesley, Moody, Luther, Calvin, and even Billy Graham. The prophet Daniel foresaw this counterattack on the moral law of God and wrote that Satan, through the power called the little horn in Daniel 7 verse 8, would attempt to change time and laws, like it says in Daniel chapter 7 verse 25. We will cover more of that a little bit later, but now we need to see that after Christ's resurrection, he ascended to the throne of the majesty in heaven, according to Hebrews chapter 8 verse 1, to become a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle which the Lord erected and not man, according to Hebrews 8:2. To both Jews and Gentiles who accept Christ, these words applied: "You are my chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, who once were not a people, but are now the people of God, who had not obtained mercy, but now obtained mercy," according to 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 9 and 10. The church after the cross now consists of spiritual Israel, those born of the Spirit in Christ. These believers were to go forward not with an earthly sanctuary, but with the message of a heavenly sanctuary. With renewed zeal, a new threat was posed to Satan. He would need to find a way to fight against the new spiritual Israel and the message of a heavenly temple. Don't miss next week as we cover Satan's second counterattack against God's newly formed spiritual Israel. And if you want to dive deeper into this subject, we actually are providing you with the blueprint, God's GPS. We'll give you a link to where you can study all of these and you can go deeper than what this devotional can provide. So just comment below for that and we'll make sure that you get the link to be able to study the rest of this. May God bless you and have a good week.